So let's take a look. This is our program that we have for today. The virtual town hall. My name is Terry Godwalt, and I'm here with Green Learning and the Center for Global Education. And we are super pumped of all the great work you're going to do. As you have heard before, we had a brief introduction and a great tweet sent out from Mr. Glenn Thibeault, who is a member of Parliament, member of the Provincial Parliament for Sudbury, and is the Parliamentary Assistant for the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. So he's going to be sharing his time with us. Mr. Thibeault, thank you so very much for sharing what you're going to be doing. After this, we're going to be introducing the participating classes. We're going to have an opportunity there, and this is where we want you to send out a tweet from your school so that we can acknowledge that. And then after that, we're going to be switching across to talk about what you've done, right? We have a number of sites that have prepared special presentations for Mr. Thibeault this morning, and we'll have an opportunity to hear from him to get a response for the great work that you've done, and that's going to be facilitated by Mary McGrath for Green Learning. This is, I mean, if you live in Ontario and you are not with us today, you are in the minority, right? Because we have quite a few people who are going to be joining us. So that is very exciting. We can see the name of the student leaders who are there and the teachers who are there as well. So this is exciting to have everybody here. We, as I said earlier, have a very special guest who is here with us today. It is Mr. Glenn Thibeault, who is a member of the Provincial Parliament for Sudbury, and he is the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. So I think what a privilege to have you join us and to have you join youth from all across the province. Let's have a huge round of applause for Mr. Thibeault as he shares a little bit about the work that he's doing as a parliamentary assistant and some of the work that the Ontario government is doing to drive forward the leadership they're playing across Canada and all around the world. So huge round of applause. Let's unmute our microphones. Welcome, Mr. Thibeault.
Great. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks for having me with you today. First off, I want to thank all of the young people for their efforts that they've done over the last month in putting together this white paper and all of the recommendations. I think that is so important. So thank you for that. I'm also happy to be speaking with you on behalf of Minister Glenn Murray, who is the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. But he sends his regrets, and he's sorry that he couldn't be with us all here today. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Glenn Thibeault. I'm the parliamentary assistant to Minister Murray, and I'm also the member of Provincial Parliament for Sudbury, Ontario. Have to do a little shout out to the folks from Llewellyn Park in Sudbury and Mrs. Leto's class. So hello to Sudbury, just because I'm from there. But as my role, I think I should give you a little bit of that information. So what is a parliamentary assistant, and what am I doing as parliamentary assistant to climate change? So I work alongside Minister Murray and Premier Wynne and other members of Provincial Parliament on important issues, and with me specifically working on fighting climate change. Part of my mandate letter that was given to me by Minister Murray and the Premier has me working to build strong relationships amongst government and its environmental and industry stakeholders, specifically when it comes to climate change. I work with industry to identify economic opportunities and benefits of climate action, and develop proposals that align with our government's climate and environmental objectives. I also think it's important to identify the unique opportunities presented to northern businesses by putting a price on carbon. And those northern businesses, a lot of them are resource-based, like mining, steel, forestry. So all the work that we do at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change is to protect Ontario's land, air, and water and fight climate change. This ensures Ontario's prosperity and quality of life for today and for future generations. And I'm excited to announce that Ontario will soon be releasing its Climate Change Action Plan. This plan includes climate-saving actions that focus on making it easier and faster for consumers and industry to access new, low-carbon technologies. Many of the ideas in your white paper align with the policies and programs we're outlining in our plan. With that, I want to say congratulations to each and every one of you on completing and participating on this plan and participating with the Youth Agenda for Change, the white paper, which is so important. You should all be proud of the hard work that you have done. You came together, you worked with your peers, and you came up with your best ideas to help fight climate change. So I want to thank you all again for participating in the Green Learning Program, and I look forward to hearing and listening to your great ideas on how Ontarians can tackle climate change, on where we live, especially what you have done personally and what you're personally committing to as part of this project to address climate change. So with that, I'll say thank you, and now I'll put my listening ears on and be prepared to listen to what you have to say. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much for coming, and thank you for the leadership that the government of Ontario is taking and their willingness to listen to the voice of the youth.
So I've got taking notes to make sure I give this to the Premier and the Minister as well, because we said we're listening, so I'll make sure I listen to everything before I take off.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's so good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. You know what, I can tell you that to the extent of my knowledge, this has never been done in Ontario before, where we have had young people who've invested so much time and so much research into this. You know, a lot of times what we do, I think adults do this a lot. They say, you know, we're going to listen to the youth. So we bring you in for some pizza, we sit on down, and now we've listened to youth. Right? No, we haven't listened to you, right? If we really want to listen, we have to enter into dialogue. If we really want to listen, we have to make sure that we have as much information as possible. You as students have spent the last month researching this, more than month researching this, right? The work that you have done is so very thoughtful and incredibly inspiring, right? And so for us to come together, the power of the voice that we've generated here today is something that, well, look who we have. I mean, Mr. Thibodeau was kind enough to, was kind enough to share his time with us this afternoon, in order for us to bring that, because of all the great work that you've done. So, ladies and gentlemen, just again, a huge thank you for all the work that you have done to make it happen.
I just wanted to also say thanks to Mr. Thibault, and we're so excited and really appreciate this opportunity. I want to thank all of the teachers and the students for their tremendous amount of work. This has been a huge, intense process, and the commitment has been insane from the teachers and from the students. So huge, huge, huge congratulations, and thank you to you guys for all of your work. It's just so exciting to see it all come to this point where we can have this dialogue. I also just want to thank the Green Learning team and the experts from the ministry that have participated and from different community groups, because they've all played a role in shaping how we've been thinking about this, and to the supporters of this project, and especially the Minister's Office and to you, Mr. Thibault, for being here to engage in this dialogue with the students and get, hear from them and give them some feedback and listen to the ideas for their personal actions, their community actions, and what they think the government can do. We've had 4 virtual town halls from across the province. We've had 28 classes participating. That's a lot of teachers and over 630 students. So this really is representative of the youth across the province. And, these are communities from London, Ontario, Brockville and Belleville, north to Carleton Place, Ottawa, and as far away as Sudbury and Thunder Bay. So it's a very, very representative group of students. And, their recommendations is so interesting. When we were going through with the student leaders, one of the things that kept coming up was there's such a role for everyone to play in fighting climate change and moving to a low-carbon Ontario. And so many of the actions were personal, but they were actions on so many different levels that students were recommending. So how can we take action personally? What can our municipality do? What can our school do? What can the government do? And so I think one of the things that kept coming up was, we can't do this alone. Everyone has to work together. So school boards can work with other partners. Government can work with businesses. So that's one of the things that you'll hear come up throughout the presentations today. So again, congratulations to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Thibault, for being here, for listening to us. And I think we can move to the next part of the agenda. And I also just wanted to remind the students that all of these actions that you've come up with, there's we haven't gotten a complete final tally, but there's between 400 and 600 actions that students have recommended. That's a huge, huge, huge amount. And all of these actions are going into that Commit to Act app online. And we're going to be sharing the URL with you, but we've started inputting all those actions. Right now, we've got the top actions in there that that we saw appear the most in those between 400 and 600 that we've collected. So don't forget to go there throughout the presentation if you've got a bit of time, and log in and show what you're going to commit to doing as an individual in terms of the actions that everybody came up with. So I want to just encourage you to keep going there and seeing, not just today, but in the future, all of the actions that we're putting in, because we're going to include every single one that came out of your presentation. So thanks again, and I really look forward to the presentation. Part of the process of collecting all the student recommendations and all the hard work that all 28 classes did, 10 student writers came together and helped to craft all those recommendations into a white paper. So some of these students are going to be presenting those recommendations, just a few of them today, because there are literally hundreds. And so we're going to move through a series of presentations, and we're going to take some breaks to check on Twitter and the voting. So we're going to start with Reese, who is from St. Ignatius High School in Thunder Bay, and she's going to present to us on sustainable transportation.
So to start off with public transportation, students in rural and urban areas are concerned about the effects of transportation on climate and want to see more public transit. Transit systems need to be designed and tailored to each region. We believe this would increase the number of riders. Commuting needs to be made more appealing through things like art and subway stations, as I've noticed in a lot of different places, the subway and transportation systems aren't very clean, which makes them super unappealing to ride. Moving on to cycling, more people would cycle to get to school or work if it was easier and safer. This could be done by developing more bike lanes and infrastructure, and by providing borrow bike services, particularly for low-income areas.
I think a couple of points that I should highlight too. At 35%, transportation emissions are the single largest source of emissions in the province. In fact, emissions from passenger car trips alone are greater than emissions from Ontario's iron, steel, cement, and chemical sectors combined. So this highlights the important role that transit can play in getting people out of cars. And cycling, as you mentioned, is a great way to reduce your carbon footprint, and you pointed that out. I also should mention that today is Bike to Work Day, so hopefully many of you convinced your parents to bike to work today. I think one of the other things too, Ontario's approach to reducing transportation emission recognizes the emission reduction potential of different technology and mode choices. And so Ontario is working hard to transition as many existing drivers out of the cars and into public transit. Cycling and even walking is something that we can do. Maybe you can talk about some of the things that you're doing, even in Thunder Bay and in Northern Ontario, to committing to reduce your transportation emissions.
Well, for an example, not too long ago, the Prime Minister actually came to Thunder Bay and rode the public transit system that's here, and he agreed with the rest of us that it actually is a pretty bad transit system. So one of the things that we're trying to improve is our transit system, due to the fact that it's not very efficient and runs super long. It's not really beneficial to anything. All it does is really take up space and add more gases to the air and everything, because it takes super long to get from place to place. The routes are inefficient, so that's mostly what we've been trying to work on here in Thunder Bay.
The next presentation is on agriculture, and the student that is going to be presenting on agriculture is Lily, and Lily is with Riverdale Collegiate Institute in Toronto, and was one of our student writers. So she's going to walk us through agriculture and food and just some of the students' recommendations for actions that they feel we can take. Lily, are you ready to jump in, and I'll round it up when you're done?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay, so agriculture contributes a huge amount of carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere annually all around the world, and we Ontarians believe that the food we eat should be carbon neutral. Now I'm going to talk about quite a few recommendations, but originally there was a huge number of recommendations from all the foods across Ontario, many that won't be talked about as well. So we believe that all farming practices need to be sustainable, and as much as possible, all the food should be grown or raised and processed locally. This will ensure that farmers have meaningful livelihood, that consumers have nutritious and healthy food, and that we move towards a low-carbon diet. If we support local processors as well as farmers, we can help to reduce the carbon emissions from transporting imported food products.
But Mr. Thibault, over to you right now for feedback for the students.
Thank you, and thank you, Lily, and everyone at Riverdale in Toronto for that presentation on agriculture and food. I think it's a paramount discussion that we need to continue to have right across the province, around the country, and around the globe. I think it's paramount because agriculture has a complex relationship with emissions, and I think you pointed that out in your presentation. Looking at farming activities, so raising livestock, using farm equipment such as tractors or food processing, they all add emissions. But plants and vegetation, on the other hand, absorb carbon. And that's, we all know, is a key greenhouse gas. And they store it in plant material on the soil, thereby reducing atmospheric carbon. So I like your suggestion about incorporating food production into urban settings through innovative methods like the vertical gardens that you mentioned. We're working hard to ensure food systems and agriculture lands will be proactively protected and resilient moving forward. We're ensuring pollinator and soil health and food security, as well as helping the agriculture sector adapt to climate change and climate impacts. The agriculture sector will be able to capitalize on new opportunities associated with low-carbon food production while remaining healthy, productive, and safe for all Ontarians. And I think another important word to add in there is sustainable. I think that's a key piece as well. We're building on existing measures such as managing and restoring wetlands, increasing green spaces, and managing diverse forests. That's something I know we're doing in my region of Sudbury quite a bit. We also increased innovation and tools to support farmers. And that'll be needed to ensure the rate of adaptation in agriculture can keep pace with the changing climate over the next 25 years. But I guess I put some of this back to you, Lily. Maybe you can talk about, and if some other students want to talk about this as well, is what are some of the actions you've committed to that will help address climate change in the agriculture and food sector?
Well, personally, I've done a lot of stuff for a number of years that helps decrease my personal carbon footprint in terms of agriculture. I'm vegetarian and have been so for over 10 years. And I know some other students at Riverdale are also vegetarians and think that the emissions as a result of that. My family also has taken to growing as much as possible by sprouting stuff in our house over the winter as well as in our garden. And we also have a food bag from Fresh City Farms, which is a local non-profit. It's a local farm that has greenhouses up at Downsview Park, and they grow a lot of food, or it's all organic. So, yeah, that's a lot of what I've been doing, my family as well.
I looked at there's some great that's going online right now on Twitter, guys. I want to throw in one point here that we have from Ms. G's class, and she was talking about how can we get our cafeterias, how local is our cafeteria food? So they like to ask that question to your school as well. How do you know the state of your local cafeteria food?
Our cafeteria is very unprofitable, and no one actually purchases food in it. But with most of it is not specifically local food. But our school is right in, like, across the street from many fast food restaurants. So unfortunately, students purchase a lot of food from those restaurants, which is definitely unsustainable and contributes to a lot of waste as well.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Thibault, over to you to close off this session. We'll go on to the next presenter.
Well, thank you. I found that interesting about the local cafeteria food. One of the things that I had to do last year was I had a challenge to live by a 100-kilometer diet and really looking for local foods. And that's something that I'm going to bring up with some of the local cafeterias with my school board. I'm going to talk to them about what's their local food, because it was even difficult. You can't use sugar for your coffee because sugar doesn't come from 100 kilometers, right? So you have to look at things like honey and those type of things. So that was a neat experience, and it's something I think we all should start doing a little more of. So thanks for that.
The next topic that we're going to discuss is renewable energy and the energy sector. And Kayla from Manitoulin Secondary School in Gore Bay on Manitoulin Island is going to be talking about energy. So over to you, Kayla.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm from Manitoulin Island, and I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Gazebo for joining us today. Our class is honored to take part in this movement. So I'll just get started. We, the youth of Ontario, envision a future in which everyone living in Ontario has access to clean, renewable energy. We want Ontario to be a leader in supporting and developing innovative new technologies and educating the public about conservation, such that we achieve and surpass our carbon commitments and create a healthy, more sustainable future for everyone. We would like to improve building codes to make new homes and buildings more energy efficient, such as a building that our class and Llewellyn Secondary School went to visit. One of the farms on Manitoulin Island has created his own greenhouse wall that generates heat and energy efficient lighting for his garage that doesn't require any other source of energy. Students in high school today will be in the job market in the next 5 to 10 years. So we need the jobs that are part of the solution. I believe that a lot of jobs are increasing with technology, but I think that we're very well capable of increasing the green movement as well. The federal and provincial governments should increase investment in the development of jobs in the renewable energy sector and in local production of green technologies. An example is solar panels.
Kayla, maybe you can talk about some of your personal plans to reduce your emissions from the energy sector. And I think an important piece here is, for also a father of 2 young daughters, what do you think you can ask parents to do as well when it comes to reducing in that sector?
Something that I've learned a lot about in the past little while since we went to visit Bert's farm, and he was talking about his massive solar panel and how it only had enough energy to use 10 hair dryers. So that's something that specifically towards you, Mr. Thibault, with your daughters and being a father, is encourage them not to use hair products like hair dryers and hair straighteners because they use a lot of energy and they're not even that good for your hair. So that's one thing that I've cut down on a lot since we started this movement. I also love natural lighting. I open up all my windows in my house and I light a lot of candles. I don't really like to use actual lights.
We also say by 2030, we envision that Ontario will have started to build the framework to minimize energy use and to use renewable energy in buildings. And that's already underway, even though by 2030, that's going to, the vision that's happening in places like Barrie, Ontario, and in other communities right now. Our commitment to resilient buildings will help communities cope with and withstand the impacts of climate change. And more details regarding this specific investments will be laid out again when we bring forward our climate action change plan very soon. So I want to, again, thank you for that presentation. I think it was very key that you also mentioned the energy evaluations for schools. I think that's something that's very important, especially now when you get into this time of year, when you have windows open and air conditioning on and those type of things. It's something that should be done. And Reese, I know this was, you were covering again for, I think you said Isabel, but maybe I'll put this question to you, and if you can't answer it, then maybe someone else can answer it for you. But thinking about what you've talked about in that presentation, what are the actions that you think you or the people today should be committed to that will help address climate change, specifically in the building sector?
Well, one of the ideas that stuck out to me most that I really support is the use of solar panels on the tops of government and school buildings, just because so many people go in and out and use those buildings daily. I think it would be really beneficial if the use of clean energy was put in place for those buildings, especially because they're so popular for people and everything. Like for schools, they leave their lights on all night. They leave lights on all night to like make sure that nobody tries to break in or anything and stuff like that. So I think it'd be really beneficial if the energy that buildings like that used was clean because they use so much of it.
The next topic that we're going to discuss is renewable energy and the energy sector. And Kayla from Manitoulin Secondary School in Gore Bay on Manitoulin Island is going to be talking about energy. So over to you, Kayla.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm from Manitoulin Island, and I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Evo for joining us today. Our class is honored to take part in this movement. So I'll just get started. We, the youth of Ontario, envision a future in which everyone living in Ontario has access to clean, renewable energy. We want Ontario to be a leader in supporting and developing innovative new technologies and educating the public about conservation, such that we achieve and surpass our carbon commitments and create a healthy, more sustainable future for everyone. We would like to improve building codes to make new homes and buildings more energy efficient, such as the building that our class at Llewellyn Secondary School went to visit. One of the farms on Manitoulin Island has created his own greenhouse wall that generates heat and energy efficient lighting for his garage that doesn't require any other source of energy. Students in high school today will be in the job market in the next 5 to 10 years. So we need the jobs that are part of the solution. I believe that a lot of jobs are increasing with technology, but I think that we're very well capable of increasing the green movement as well. The federal and provincial governments should increase investment in the development of jobs in the renewable energy sector and in local production of green technologies. An example is solar panels.
Kayla, maybe you can talk about some of your personal plans to reduce your emissions from the energy sector. And I think an important piece here is, for also a father of 2 young daughters, what do you think you can ask parents to do as well when it comes to reducing in that sector?
Something that I've learned a lot about in the past little while since we went to visit Bert's farm, and he was talking about his massive solar panel and how it only had enough energy to use 10 hair dryers. So that's something that specifically towards you, Mr. Thibault, with your daughters and being a father, is encourage them not to use hair products like hair dryers and hair straighteners because they use a lot of energy and they're not even that good for your hair. So that's one thing that I've cut down on a lot since we started this movement. I also love natural lighting. I open up all my windows in my house and I light a lot of candles. I don't really like to use
The next topic that we're going to discuss is industry, and we combined the cap and trade with industry. And so Maddie is going to talk about industry and thoughts on cap and trade. Maddie, are you ready to present?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maddie.
So, all right, from Sudbury, thanks again, Mr. Thibault, for your interest in the work of students from across the province. So, about industry. Industry accounts for about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions in Ontario in 2012. So, many students were really interested in the province's new cap and trade system. So, for the beginning of this, we really looked at planned obsolescence in the fast fashion industry. So Ontario sends over 8 million tons of waste to landfills each year, and Ontario's overall waste diversion rate is just 25%. Between 1990 and 2012 in Ontario, greenhouse gas emissions from landfills increased by 25%. In Canada, an estimated $1 billion in valuable resources is lost to landfills every year, so things that could have been reused. Textile waste is a significant part of waste to landfills. So much of the waste that comes from the fast fashion industry, so trends changing, people getting rid of clothing, much of it is man-made material, and it takes many years to decompose and results in a lot of extra pollution in landfills. Governments and manufacturers need to find mechanisms to ensure the cost of goods includes all environmental and social costs. So one class suggested a green Dragon's Den, so a spin-off of the TV show Dragon's Den, where we find innovative ideas, but just for climate change, green ideas, way to improve things in industries. Bringing a personal thing into this, my grandfather started the Jarrett Value Center in Sudbury, which is a thrift store which encourages the use of donations and using thrift stores throughout the city. And this is really important to continue to encourage different people in society to not throw out clothing and not always buy new clothing, to try and reuse it to decrease their carbon footprint. It's important that we as individuals take initiative to keep our used products that can be reused out of landfills.
I took some notes here into how you made the presentation and you brought it forward. I think first you were talking specifically or looking a little bit at waste. So we're working hard right now to pass our Waste Free Ontario Act to reduce waste and really recover our resources. This bold new approach transforms how we manage waste and encourages the development of products and packaging that are never discarded. Can you maybe talk about some of the things that you could do, that we all could do to cut down waste in our own life?
There are a lot of things that we can all do individually to cut down waste. One of the big things, like we talked about, the fast fashion industry, would be to donate to thrift stores, to donate to things like Value Village. I know there are many different options, and to also buy from these thrift stores. So that's something that sometimes has a bit of a taboo on it. People don't necessarily want to buy from thrift stores for one reason or another. So if that's something that can be encouraged and become a norm, then that's something that could really cut down on the...
Well, there was a lot in that. And I think the one thing I would do to tell everyone that's been participating today is be tenacious in it. Every decision that we make right now as politicians, as you know, individuals, MPPs that are in Queen's Park, will affect the students that we spoke to today the most, because the decisions that we are making will truly show the effects of that by the time they're adults and are really starting to look at everything in perspective. So I tip my hat to all of them that participated in this. I think Reese said it was super awesome at 10,000 hours of working together, and I would echo that. When you work together and you make sure that we're coming together as one voice, I think we will all hear that loud and clear. So I'll encourage you all to make sure that you go see your local MPPs, to make sure that they recognize that this paper is out, that it's not just another report that's going to gather dust. Because, you know what, many of these reports will get sent to MPPs, but if you don't have any follow-up, so my encouragement to you is follow up with your MPPs. If it's a phone call, if it's an email, if it's a tweet, drop by the office. We're all going to be in our offices come June 10th. When Queen's Park rises for the summer, and we'll be out, you know, talking to people and want to make sure that we talk to you. So don't let it end here. Continue to advocate, continue to be that strong voice, and I'll make sure that I'm there to listen as much as I can and pass along the message that I got today, both to the Premier and to the Minister as well, because this was a great opportunity for me to be able to hear the stories, the feedback, the ideas, the suggestions, and I'll make sure I take that back. And just very quickly, I also want to thank both you, Mary, and Terry. So Mary from Green Learning and Terry for the Center for Global Education for kind of coordinating this and being involved, because this was something pretty spectacular. So with that, I'll say thanks.
I mean, this whole dialogue that we've had with climate change where I live has been a wonderful and empowering example of social change at work, in my opinion, because we had over 10,000 hours of student work and teacher assistance that went into researching these ideas and articulating them for how we can create a low-carbon Ontario. I think it's, I don't think it's been done in Ontario before, as Terry mentioned, and I think it's incredibly important to hear these ideas from youth because they are the voters of tomorrow, and some of these students are already wishing they could vote already. So, so there's a lot of power in that, and for them to feel like they've been listened to as well is very empowering for young people. And so what we've seen today is just the tip of the iceberg, and we know that these young people are really ready to do their part.
I want to throw out some of the votes that we have. Take a look at this. As we still have one site that's going to be getting connected here, get their audio going. So as you can see right here, we have, look at this, a solid 40% of people want to do every single action that's listed up there and above. So well done, guys. That's great. We can see that there's some action that's going to be definitely taken on the basis of what we have talked about and done throughout this project that we've had.
So many of the recommendations that we received actually are developed for responsibility of a local government. For example, I'm planning on asking a local councillor if we could start a community garden for the agriculture section. And to actually get this message across around our schools and our community, we can spread our ideas via social media, so with photos, online petitions, the Action app, for example, messages of support, email campaigns, online newsletters, and more. And we can talk to all sorts of people from all around the community, including environmental groups, so like any conservation authorities, like the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority that we have up here. We can talk to youth groups, other community groups, industry, and even our media, so newspaper and radio. And just in conducting all of these projects that everybody's been working on, many schools have contacted their local groups and organizations who provided information and spoke to classes, and we can continue this communication and share to them all of the great work that we've done. So for example, Westminster Secondary School in London, one of the schools in this project, actually sent their climate change report on urban forests to their municipality and the school board, and they thought that would be a good way to keep the conversation going. And everybody can do the same and keep sharing these great ideas and the message behind them. And